Hello, my name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're watching Chaotic Riff TV. We've just launched this in 2023. Andy, you're one of the first people I thought to reach out to because when I interviewed you last year, we were talking about a lot of the bands that influenced you, and you're telling me that you like to. You said, "Yeah, I like to talk about that in a follow-up interview." And one of those bands you mentioned is Quiet Riot, and of course, the album that we're going to be talking about today is Mental Health. This album is celebrating 40 years, if you can believe that. So I
Yeah.
guess the best place to start the interview off is if you could share with us the story of how you first became aware of Quiet Riot, that album in particular. What's your story of how you became a fan?
All right. So, it's, probably, let's see, 1983, it came out. I was in probably fourth grade. I think I discovered that watching MTV.
Yeah.
Um, the Come On Feel the Noise video, like everybody else in America at that time.
A lot of people have that story. Now, let me ask you at the time, you're 4 years old, you're a kid, and you're
Well, no,
becoming
no, no. I was like 7 and 8,
seven or
between
eight.
seven and
Okay.
eight.
But let me ask you, so like a lot of people, I bet you thought "Come On, Feel the Noise" was, of course, the Quiet Riot song, and now the older you get, you realize no, that's a cover song. They're covering a band called Slade.
Yep.
Yeah,
So at the time, I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I do recall Slade coming out with an album a year or two later,
yeah,
with like stuff like that, and then somebody, I don't know, maybe it's an older cousin or somebody,
yeah, yeah.
or
The
or
funny
somebody
thing,
at school. I'm
the
not
funny
really
thing,
sure, but I'm sorry.
the funny thing about that is, I almost think, Slade, of course, they're original, so you can't say anything really bad about them. But Quiet Riot, I think, did such a great job of really owning the song and making it their own. I mean, I heard Kevin and Frankie talk over years how Kevin Dubrow, he hated Slade. He was really totally against doing it. And they went in the studio and they were trying to do the worst possible job. And then they kind of looked at each other, you know what? We did a great job on that song, didn't we?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I've definitely heard that story before for sure. Um, so I listened to the album again today because I hadn't listened to it in a while, but
Yeah.
it was funny because I remembered like most of the lyrics, melodies, choruses, things like that. But I guess listening to it with ears that are 40 years older
Yeah. Yeah.
than when I was listening to it first, because I've listened to it a lot over the years. I've had
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
copies of it. I think it might have been one of my first cassettes I ever got. I've had it on CD a number of times. I've had the bonus version that had like Danger Zone on it.
40
I,
years.
I
Yeah. I
picked up
mean, yeah.
so yeah. Over the years, I've had a lot of different versions of the album,
Yeah.
and listening to it today, um, I was really struck by like how much like I guess it's kind of obvious in a way, but it wasn't to me then. The sort of 70s influence of like your European stuff, like your
For sure.
Scorpions and your UFO and all that kind of stuff. Um, and then the other thing that really struck me was just Kevin's range. Wow. Like as a singer now, just listening to him like belt out those high screams and really hitting the notes good and solid, and not get, he had a gruff to it, but it never got really guttural. It was always a very clear, like just piercing tone. um Really cool record, still a lot of fun to listen to for sure.
Do you think you have more appreciation of what Kevin did all these years later, partly because you're a singer yourself and you realize what it takes to sing those songs?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And plus, I was lucky enough to see Quiet Riot later years. It was a Mental Health reunion era. So I saw two of those shows with the actual, all four
Yeah.
lineup.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then later I saw Kevin do a couple solo shows around the time that he was doing his what was that covers record? In
I
for
know
the
you
Kill,
mean.
maybe, or
Yeah, I know what you're talking. I can't. It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think that.
yeah, it was like a covers record he put out around 2003 or so. And so I saw one of those shows, and then I saw him on this thing called the Bad Boys of Rock tour. Um, and I believe the other singers were like Joe Listay, Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses was on that tour.
I think Janie
And
Lane even. Janie Lane. Yeah.
well, see, Janie Lane was supposed to be at the show I was going to be at, but he didn't make
Okay.
that show for some
Wow.
reason.
Yeah.
I think the excuse, they said he was sick on the bus.
But that's when he
So
was starting to have all his issues, I think, and they were trying to
probably.
cover for him. And it's interesting because, as great of a singer as Kevin DuBrow was, I don't really think he got his, dues until maybe after his death. People didn't realize what a great frontman he was. I think that was a lot to do with, the heavy drug use in the 80s and, kind of shooting off his mouth and that. But it was nice to see that he got a chance one more time to kind of come back to Quiet Riot and end on a high note.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not super crazy about the Rehab album, but I think it was great that that they were, he had a whole second leg of his career there basically after the Mental Health reunion, the Alive in the 20th Century or whatever, that whole thing with the DVD release and all that. So it was kind of a resurgence for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny because I think back to like how much of a fan I was of Quiet Riot, all three albums. Not counting the first two because I didn't know anything about those, the Japanese releases, but Mental Health, Condition Critical, and QR3.
Sure.
Totally into the band all through like say junior high or so. And then when I found out they fired Kevin and they brought in Paul Shortino, I remember seeing the video on Headbangers Ball, but I would not buy the album.
Here's the thing with that.
I was like, no way am I going to buy a Quiet Riot album that's got some other. I just wouldn't do it.
Here's the thing with that. I listened to some of that Quiet Riot album with Paul Shortino. Decent album.
Yeah.
I like a lot of the songs, but let's be honest. I think it was kind of ballsy to call it Quiet Riot. They should have called it something else. But of course, that's where my money was in the Quiet Riot name. And it's almost like when Tony Iommi tried to put out a solo album and they called it, Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi.
Oh yeah, with Seventh Star and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And let's talk about some of the songs on this album. Of course, Come On, Feel the Noise. Then you got the title track, Mental Health.
Right.
Great fist pumping tune, and then I really love the song, of course, Thunderbird. Of course, a tribute to the band's original fallen guitarist, of course, Randy Rhoads, who tragically died young in that, plane crash.
And another one where the influence just shines through it. It's definitely based on a Queen kind of idea. You can listen to that song and just hear where Kevin is really channeling Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
And then, man, that note that he just holds forever at the end. The fly away part at the end. It's just incredible. Like I said, like literally an hour before we started talking, I started listening to all the tracks just to kind of refresh and kind of get it, kind of fresh in my head and have like a new perspective on a lot of it, because for its time, it's a very well balanced album. There's no filler on the record whatsoever, as far as I'm concerned. And the arrangements and sort of the things that you do to trick up the arrangements and change things on verses and additional choruses and things like that, where they take the songs really sophisticated, I think. When you compare it to other bands in LA at the time who were coming from a much more simple kind of place.
Yeah, and for its time, it was unique because they often cite it as the first metal album to go #1, and that's quite a feat for a metal act, And the thing people don't realize is Quiet Riot, of course, was around in the mid to late 70s, and of course it was a different lineup. And the two eras of the band are almost two completely different bands. Not just lineup wise, but in the 70s with Randy and Kevin, they were much more closer to maybe a glam rock band than what they turned into with Mental Health. A lot closer, of course, to metal,
And I think the bridge there is the DuBrow material. Like, I think a lot of these songs on this record were carried over from Kevin's DuBrow band. And that apparently, from what I've read, he met Spencer Proffer, and Spencer got him the deal with Pasha CBS or whatever. And then CBS kind of was the one who said, well, maybe you should call this Quiet Riot.
Yeah.
And then I think Rudy coming back maybe had something to do with that too.
Yeah. And again, talking a little bit about that, Rudy had left to do the Ozzy tour, and and heard him talk over years that, well, he goes, with me returning to Quiet Riot was because we all could relate to the loss of Randy, and we were all going through that, and that's why he wanted to go back. And it's kind of unique that when Frankie was dying of cancer, he asked Rudy, hey, would you mind coming back? I think we need you in the band to kind of be able to carry on the Quiet Riot flag, and it's I think working out in a way. It's Quiet Riot without Kevin DuBrow is very different, but it's kind of like Leonard Skinner to me now. It's kind of like these guys carrying the torch.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Rudy definitely brings a lot of authenticity. It kind of anchors the whole thing. And it honestly, I believe, has got them more attention. Not that they didn't have attention on them, but, obviously Frankie dying and
Yeah,
then Rudy coming in almost right after that, pretty much, saying, hey, I'm here to keep the band,
yeah,
you know, going forward for sure.
and yeah,
Speaking of Frankie, his drumming on this record
yeah,
is just incredible. Some of the fills are
yeah,
so like fast and like tricked up and complicated. And I'm not a drummer, but I can see where like 1983, 1984 me, those drums would be exciting to a kid, and they still are. But yeah, that was another that thing that kind of struck me. I mean, the playing on this record is just so amazing. Yeah, Carlos, he plays some really just like tasty, but he can do the flash when he wants to, but he's got the melodic chops that I think come from, again, like sort of that UFO, that Michael Schenker, very European kind of influenced.
To me, he's always been a very underrated guitar player. I mean, I
Yeah,
think a lot of that has to
absolutely.
do with being the guy who replaced Randy Rhoads. People
Right.
might think he kind of looks like Randy, kind of plays like him, um,
Yeah.
but he's not Randy. But if you even look at the one album he did with Rat, I mean, he was a co-writer on the big single off that album, The Best of Me.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
so,
I saw him with Rat actually. Rocklahoma 2009, Rat did all of Out of the Cellar in its entirety, and Carlos was in the lineup.
wow.
And so that was
Yeah,
awesome because that was still like the original four guys.
yeah. And I gotta tip my hat to the current guitar player Alex Grossi for helping to keep you know carrying the torch because interesting thing you mentioned about going to see that tour that Kevin was supporting his solo album. That's where he first encountered Alex Grossi. He was back in Kevin and his band, and
Right.
and that kind of brings us up to modern day. I'm sure you've heard the latest Quiet Riot single, "Can't Hold On," which
Yeah.
Alex Grossi apparently found in his archives, and that's
Yeah,
how
I
that
found it on an iPod.
yeah. And,
So imagine that you're digging through it. He must have been looking for the song itself because I can't think of any other reason that somebody would be like, oh, wonder what's
I'm
on this
sure he
iPod
must have
from.
had it in his mind, like I know that track's laying around somewhere, and
Right.
it'd be interesting to pull it out. And it's interesting too because not only did they find this lost track with both Kevin and Frankie, but they were able to have Rudy come in and kind of do his magic on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
And
cool.
it's interesting the way the fans have reacted to it. I think many stations are playing it. It's gone to number one on some of the stations. And again, this is from a aging metal band, and they haven't had a new album come out in I think since 2016, and so it's a great lost track. And I love the fact that people are responding to it in such a positive way. And if you listen to the song, well, it may not have been about that when they originally recorded. It's kind of taken on a new meaning, not just if you watch the video, but because it's got great images of Kevin and Frankie throughout the years. But can't hold on. It takes on these two guys are no longer here, and the band's carrying on, and it almost takes on a
Yeah.
new meaning. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the video and the song are a very powerful, emotional. Like the first time. Yeah, I mean, always you just kind of like, wow. It's emotional for sure.
And a
Absolutely.
couple other songs on here that I really love is, of course, "Slick Black Cadillac." That is one of those
Right.
songs. Going back to the earlier lineup. I think it may have been on one of the first two albums, and then they re-recorded it with the Metal Health lineup. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
nod to that era. But that's a great track. Great way to rev the audience up.
Randy had a lot to do with writing that one.
Yeah,
And I think when Rudy first learned that song, he was talking. I'm reading an interview. He
yeah,
was talking about all the key changes in that. And if you really listen, the chorus modulates all
yeah,
over the place. Sometimes you'll have a verse that'll be up a half step, and then other times, chorus will be like up a full step or whatever. And it just goes a lot of different places for for a fairly simple sounding pop song, it's a little bit more complex than you would think it would be.
And then Come On Feel the Noise, of course, like you said yourself, you have that same story like a lot of us. First seeing the video on MTV, it was all over the place, and it was a big radio hit too back in the day. But another interesting song is "Don't Want to Let You Go." I wouldn't like call that a ballad, but I think it was Quiet Riot's attempt to maybe have a little more of a commercial radio hit, and I think people kind of surprised at first. Kevin doing a song like
apparently. Yeah. So apparently, I'm sorry. Apparently, that's one of two songs that Chuck Wright played on. Even though he was out of the band, he had already laid bass down on that, and they just kept it. And then I was listening to Danger Zone today, which is like the bonus track that wasn't part of the record that I didn't even know about for years or whatever, but was on some of my later versions. And just listening to that today, I'm pretty sure that Chuck must have played on that, because a lot of his little like funky, plucky things that he would do that aren't necessarily how Rudy would play. Some of those lines are in there, so I'm pretty sure that Chuck was on that.
Chuck Wright, I gotta tip my hat to him too, because he's one of the guys that is really he's been in and out of the band several times over the years, and after being a loyal soldier all these years, could you imagine being asked, "Hey Chuck, we want Rudy to come back. Do you mind stepping down?" I mean,
it's like 1983 all over again. It's like, well, Rudy's coming back. Thanks for keeping his seat warm.
In fact, I've heard both those guys talk in interviews over years about the fact they both play on the album, where Chuck says like, people always bring the album. Some people want him to autograph it, or and he explains, well, I'm not on the whole album. Everybody, they say, well, no, we want Rudy to autograph it. Now, I'm sorry, I just play on 2 tracks. And then And I remember interviewing Rudy once, and I was asking him about, hey, so Rudy, how many tracks do you play on? Which tracks do you play on? And he's like, well, hey, did you read the credits? And okay, So I guess it's kind of a sore subject with some of those guys.
Right on. I have heard that Rudy is like one of the nicest guys.
Oh yeah, he's super cool. Kind of funny I got that response, but I found all those guys anytime I've had to interact with them to be super cool. And I think it's cool that sadly Kevin's gone, but that maybe he's getting the respect he didn't get in life. I mean, I think people finally give him credit for being the rock star that he was, or the great singer that he was.
Yeah. I mean, amazing frontman, great singer, and probably a really underrated lyricist. Honestly, like some of his lyrics are so clever. And it's not even something I picked up on today. It's like lyrics that stuck with me for I guess since back in that time. The whole teacher says that I'm one big pain, got a mouth like an alligator. That kind of stuff kind of speaks to you, like when you're in elementary school or something. You're like, it kind of just
those words just hit you, And you talked about, you mentioned the Rehab album. One track I did really love off of that album was the track they did with Glenn Hughes, "Evil Woman." Just a monster remake, but they really made it their own.
Okay, so that's the Evil Woman that Black Sabbath covered, or
no? I think it's a Spooky Tooth cover actually. Evil Woman. That's a cover they did. That was on the Rehab album, and Glenn Hughes was a guest vocalist on that. Yeah.
Oh man, Glenn Hughes. Yeah, I saw him with Dead Daisies. And absolutely incredible still.
I gotta tell you, Dead Daisies, one of my favorite newer bands. I mean, I love what they did with John Corabi, and then I thought when he left the band, I'm like, who the hell are they gonna get to fill his shoes? But I mean, Glenn Hughes is the legend that he is, like you said, that he was so huge that he's a bass player and a great frontman, so they got one guy to fill 2 guys' spots.
Yeah. And I've seen both lineups. I saw them with Corabi open for Kiss, and then I saw Dead Daisies in a club in Columbus, Ohio. And it was a bigger club called the King of Clubs. But I mean, just seeing Glenn Hughes on that stage, like performing at that level at his age now, he's what, 72 or something.
You look at him,
like still belting out Burn. You know what I'm saying? He's still doing the high parts on Burn and stuff like that. It's just amazing. I mean,
Fountain of Youth, very much like Jeff Beck, who just passed away. I had no idea that guy was 78 years, and you look at him, you're like, oh my God. Yeah. And yeah, I love their version, but Dead Daisies I'm talking about. I love their version of 30 Days in the Hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah. I'm
okay,
a
Andy,
pod.
before we wrap it up, I would like to ask you a little bit about your own band, Zeroking. So you guys had this great album came out last November, American Savior. How's that been going? People responding to it?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. We're actually starting to get some radio play in our home area here in Charleston, West Virginia. Shout out to Rock 105 WKLC. And people have been requesting the song. We're getting ready to, it's going to air on a station in Michigan.
Mhm.
And that's coming up like next week, I think, is when that ad's up there in
Okay.
Detroit.
Yeah.
And we're picking up some other stations around Kentucky. So the song Back Off is doing really well. The album is starting to make some waves. We've got about 13 shows or so
Okay.
starting in February that we're going to be playing in 6 states, which is
Uh-huh.
kind of where we're starting.
Yeah.
And we'll see where it goes, branch out from there. In the next couple of days, I'll have a graphic out that has all the tour dates on our Facebook
Uh,
page,
yeah.
facebook.com/Zero King Fans.
Yeah.
And
And I want to talk a little bit about that for a minute because I was reading on your Facebook page that Zero King has had over 1,000 reactions on your Facebook page. That's pretty awesome. I mean, that's telling you right there about the loyal fan base you have.
yeah, that's actually happened the last 2 months.
Wow, wow.
And that's got to be a first for us. I mean, we've gotten good support over the years, but I really feel like everybody's, kind of coming on board with the album, and
Really
maybe like
gelling.
they
Yeah,
weren't they maybe didn't know that we were active or as active, and have kind of rediscovered the band, and we're
yeah,
making a lot of new fans, and
yeah.
things are
That's
good
great.
right now.
And again, the last time I interviewed you, we talked about this, but I that's what I really love about the name of the band, Zero King. It's like two polar opposites. I mean, how many of us haven't had somebody tell us in our life, "Hey, you're a real zero," or you sometimes you may feel like you're on top of the world. You're the king. It's like the two polar opposites. I love that.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, and then you talk about the single and the video for Back Off. We were talking about that too last time, and I was watching the video again, prepping for today's interview, and very impressive. You want to talk a little bit about it's kind of got a martial arts theme to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the star of the video, her name is Kaylin Kowalski. She's out of the Detroit, Michigan area, and she is a uh, karate champion. She's been competing in events all over the U.S. from Vegas to Florida to Minneapolis and she's been on the cover of Black Belt magazine. I've seen her on the ESPN too. And when we played the Token up in Detroit, uh, her and her family came out and supported us, and that was really awesome to get to meet her parents. We met her mother, but we had never met Ed, her dad.
Wow.
And so they're all fans. They've been super supportive online, helping us, share posts and things like
Yeah.
that. And we look forward to seeing them when we come to Michigan. So, which we've got some shows up that way at the beginning of February. We're doing this really cool thing called 11 Mile Sessions,
Okay.
and it's a live internet broadcast where we play live, and we do some interview stuff, and you can watch it on like Roku and Fire Stick.
Oh,
We'll
wow.
put up all the information on our page, and that's February 2nd. And then February 3rd, we're in Battle Creek, Michigan, at the Music Factory, and the 4th we're in South Bend, Indiana, at Cheers for the very first time. So brand new
Wow.
market for us.
Where
So
everybody knows
that's
your
just a little smidgen of what's going on right at the beginning of February when we kick back into gear. But we've been getting ready for these shows, getting ready for this performance, and actually writing some new stuff. We've been in the studio doing a covers EP. There's all sorts of stuff that's going on right now.
Well,
So
Andy, I really enjoyed talking to you again, and this is a real fun way of doing it. This is probably what we're going to do from now on. And anytime I talk to you, I'd love to
okay,
invite you back. Once you've next time maybe we talk about the interactive event you're going to have coming up. You're talking about, and once the covers thing comes out, love to talk about that. And so let's keep in touch. And when I post video, probably in the next week or so, I'll let you know, and feel free to share it. But thanks for taking time to talk to me today, because I know it's a little late where you are. We really appreciate you taking.
it's okay. I'm actually just finishing up my work shift, and then I'm getting ready to go home, get ready, and go out to a friend's birthday party. Actually, it's another karaoke.
Oh wow. Well,
I know last time we talked about karaoke, so that's kind of funny. But
it's funny. I just interviewed another singer, and he was telling me if you're a singer, a way to keep your chops up is karaoke. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I mean, it's fun. You know, when you're used to like working the stage, it takes the karaoke guys by surprise. They're like, "Oh, wow, do you do this professionally?" And it's like, "Yeah, I guess I kind of do."
Hey,
Um,
I get paid for
so
it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and tomorrow, I just today actually I scored tickets to go see Lita Ford and Firehouse thanks to a friend who can't attend, but that's what
Oh,
I'm doing
wow.
tomorrow.
Enjoy yourself. That's great
Yeah,
rock and roll right there. Well,
yeah,
Andy,
yeah.
take care, my friend, and we'll be talking again down the line, I'm sure. Have a great rest of your night. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Anytime. Bye bye.
All right, bye bye.